Welcome to the Rideshare Guy Podcast, where you will learn about the rideshare and mobility industry straight from Harry Campbell, who's got over 5 years experience covering the industry and has talked to thousands of drivers. There's no better place to stay up to date, entertained, and educated. So let's dive in.
So Elijah Bilel has done over 4,000 deliveries in the past 5 years for companies including Instacart, Uber Eats, DoorDash, and others. He's also the manager of the Rideshare Guy YouTube channel and co-creator of our newest course, Maximum Delivery Profit. So really excited to have you on today, Elijah. And how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Happy to be contributing content and adding value because specifically when it comes to delivery, it's an interesting way you can use to make money, and it can be used as a footstool to really get other things off the ground too. Really excited, and yeah.
No, I really like. I will say that one quality that you have that I think is, that I really appreciate of yours is that, man, you get a lot of work in, right? You've delivered over 4,000, trips for these apps. You've probably made, I want to say you've definitely done at least hundreds of videos, if not over 1,000 between your own channel, between my channel and the course that we just released. So how do you, just on a personal level, how do you kind of balance your time and find the time to do everything that you're doing?
I'll sum it up in 2 words. Google Calendar. It's your best friend.
Okay.
If you don't use some kind of calendar and block off times to do certain things, nothing's going to get done. So that Google Calendar has become my best friend. So I literally schedule my shifts around when I go to deliver, when I go to make videos, and when I go to do work for the Rideshare Guy. It's all booked in that calendar in 2 to 3 hour slots. So
interesting. You know what I thought you were going to say?
Well, what do you think I was going to say?
I thought you were going to say 2 words, no kids, because that's the other way to get a lot of work done.
Well, we can co-op it, just combine them, then we have 4 words, because that is true.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool. Well, I definitely know, you've been putting in a lot of work, and I really like the viewpoint that you appreciate, because not only are you sort of delivering, you've leveraged this into creating content about what it's like to be a career delivery person. Now you've basically done all of the work creating these videos for the course, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. And you've got a lot of other kind of cool side projects, businesses, and things like that going on that I think, like you mentioned, delivery has been a really great stepping stool for you. So I'm curious to know, kind of why did you pick delivery in the first place? I mean, right now we're sort of in the pandemic, hopefully at the end of a pandemic. And, we've seen a huge shift to delivery, a lot of rideshare drivers switching to delivery, a lot of new people signing up to deliver food, packages, groceries. But you've sort of always, you're an OG delivery driver. So why'd you pick delivery in the first place?
Well, interesting thing. Originally, my exposure to the gig economy was rideshare, wasn't delivery. So, started driving for Uber, and Uber kept harassing me every 2 seconds, asking if I wanted to deliver Uber Eats. Did I want to deliver Uber Eats? I kept ignoring it at first, and then I said, you know what, let me just go ahead and give it a try. So I gave it a try. Turns out that I actually enjoyed it, and I was actually making about the same money I was making with rideshare delivering food. Only difference is there was no one in my back seat, so I was free to listen to whatever I wanted. Okay. Now, I'm not going to lie, I do blast my music, but that's a great opportunity to listen to audiobooks, to podcasts like this one, to just material that you can learn. And that kind of kept me glued into delivery. Eventually, I put rideshare on the back burner, and that's how I got so many trips in for delivery. It's kind of like these delivery apps started paying for my education. They were kind of like new college, no pun intended.
So it's Uber's fault that you ended up switching over to delivery. And, you said something interesting. You said that you made about the same doing delivery as rideshare. And personally, I'm curious to know, maybe you can talk a little about the market you're driving and how much you were making or trying to average in general in a second here. But I've always found personally, and from a lot of the surveys that we've done, that delivery drivers have made a little less than rideshare. I've sort of said that drivers can make, the average delivery driver makes maybe $10 to $15 an hour before expenses, and the average rideshare driver makes more in the $15 to $20 per hour before expense range. And I think the reason why I've always sort of seen that in the data and felt that is because people will pay more for a ride for themselves than they will for their burrito, right? So I'm curious to know, why your experience was different.
Well, it all comes down to strategy. One thing I love about the delivery industry is it is skill-based to some degree. So if you do learn the right tactics, the right strategies, you can actually earn a decent amount more than the average delivery driver. I mean, a simple strategy is if you're going to do multi-apping, like driving for Uber Eats and DoorDash, we don't often think that when you're at the end of your first delivery, you could go ahead and turn on, let's say you're on DoorDash, you can turn on Uber Eats, get your thing, drop off that order, and then head off to the next delivery. And that aspect alone can increase your per hour average by like $2 to $3 because you slid an extra delivery in.
Yeah.
And the difference you mentioned as far as ride sharing, delivery, and earnings, it usually is that one delivery that you're not getting. So if you can slide that in that hour, all of a sudden it balances the scale.
Interesting. And I mean, what's funny is that, this is actually a strategy that we've talked about before in regards to Uber and Lyft drivers. And this was in the early days before Uber and Lyft were sending you the next trip request, right? When this kind of this kind of action that you're taking, like going online with another app, maybe when you're like a mile or two away from your destination, that was something that I used to do all the time. And then, now the companies have added this next trip feature. And there's also, there's higher volume, right? Typically you're doing more rides per hour with Uber and Lyft than you are with deliveries. So, what I like about this strategy you just described is that it's so much more important on delivery, where maybe you're only averaging 2 deliveries per hour. If you can get that one delivery just 10, 15 minutes quicker or 5 minutes quicker, it does make a big impact on your earnings, right? Versus Uber and Lyft, if you're doing 3 to 5 short trips an hour or 3 to 4 short trips an hour, it's less meaningful on your earnings, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the basics of it.
Very cool. So you've worked for a bunch of delivery companies. What's your favorite delivery company to work for and why?
Oh gosh, that's a hard one to answer. I want to say Uber Eats is my favorite, but DoorDash is trying to knock them off the pedestal. But I still say Uber Eats is up there. Main reason is Uber Eats has a very one big thing is it has a bigger customer base. So people were already signed up for the normal Uber when they rolled out, then they were exposed to Uber Eats. So the next best thing was just to go ahead and sign up for Uber Eats if I want that burrito delivered. So there's a lot of demand in my marketplace, but specifically for the other apps.
And what market are you in?
I'm in the Dallas-Fort Worth market, the DFW.
Got it.
But specifically with Uber Eats and the other apps, because I'm a customer too. I order Uber Eats pretty frequently. And I noticed that they have a time limit that they're pretty much guaranteeing that food in. And the Uber Eats algorithm revolves around that time limit. So once you know that, you can base your strategies around that. I didn't notice that with the other apps. So it's a little more easier to, I always say, pimp the algorithm once you learn the basics and how it works.
Got it. Can you explain that a little further? How does the Uber Eats app work? Are you saying it has what do you mean with the timer? Okay,
so your burrito is guaranteed in, let's say, 30 to 40 minutes. The order is going to be dispatched within 5 to 10 minutes after the customer places the order. And when that happens, a ping goes out to drivers to be able to take it. Yeah. Based on that ping going out, you'll be able to tell, once you accept the trip, if you're at a certain distance away from the restaurant, you can tell what cycle the ping is in. Because if it's if it's trying to pull you from far, that means it's in the later part of that cycle. And with that being the case, that means that the customer may tip more. It also means that Uber may be adding a little bonus on top of it if it's been floating around too long.
Because they don't want it to be, sitting there forever, right? So they sort of pay a little more the longer it takes.
Exactly. No one wants a cold burrito. Well, at least I know I don't.
Interesting. And it's funny that you mentioned you're a big consumer of the apps because, I've delivered for a bunch of the services too, but I will say I've ordered probably 50 or 100 times more, not 50 to 100, like 50 to 100x time, 50 to 100x times more because I'm lazy. I've got kids. We've also got a little free credit and it's sort of my job to try out a lot of these apps. So for those 4 or 5 reasons, I think I have a good excuse, but I know that's actually one of the videos that I like most in the delivery course. I think we have a video on, sort of the one thing you should do when you're first, or one thing you should do when you're first signing up for these services is to actually try them as a customer. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, for one thing, your first delivery in almost every case is going to be free. So why not go ahead and get that food delivery for free?
Yeah.
But with that,
and I think in that video in the course, we actually put promo codes for each of the apps. So not only will you get a free meal, but Harry and his kids will also get a free meal. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, it's a win-win in addition to getting us that burrito. Yeah. But once you experience things from the customer's end, That's really where I started coming up with a lot of the delivery strategies. So like a lot of times these companies will give drivers 2 deliveries. You know, they offer a little extra something if you take another delivery. And as a customer, I remember one time I was ordering and I noticed my driver would just stop on the street. I'm like, well, what's going on? I was getting kind of annoyed. And then after 5 minutes, they started moving back to me.
Yeah.
As a driver, I put 2 and 2 together. Oh, they're dropping off another delivery.
Right.
Well,
batched order.
Since the customer may have a chance to get kind of irritable, that'll influence your tip probably. Why not just send a little standard message saying, hey, I have another order. I'm going to drop it off real quick. Then I'm going to be heading your way real fast. Now they know the situation. They're not thinking that you're stopping at a gas station, holding up their meal. Yeah. And that all came from me using the customer app.
Interesting. And it's especially important on Uber Eats where you actually, I mean, I guess they now have an option to set a tip at the beginning, but you can, actually set the tip at the end, where with some of these other delivery apps, you've probably noticed, right? That like once you set the tip, like on DoorDash, for example, you might be able to go in and change it after, but you set the tip when you place the order. So whether you get good service or bad service, you kind of already tipped, right? So it's interesting, to see the differences between those apps. And I mean, I think the batched order example is perfect because frankly, I think a lot of these delivery companies do a pretty terrible job when it comes to informing the customer what's going on. And I mean, I literally had an order again, I've delivered for the companies too, so I know what's going on. I had an order last night where it was like, I ordered a burrito, actually, speaking of burritos, and, it was probably 20 to 25 minutes where the Postmates app said that the driver was on another delivery. I'm like, dude, where is this guy? Where is this guy going? And you can't actually see where they are when they're on the first leg of a batch trip as a customer, right? I'm assuming there's some privacy reasons there. And so like sending a text is such a simple and elegant and easy and quick solution. But I would say 95% of couriers do not do this, maybe higher. And so that's why I really like that, we actually have in the course, we added a script of text messages and situations of when you can use, like exactly what you're describing. Cause like that small thing, especially on Postmates where you leave, they ask you for a percentage tip afterwards. Like you can imagine people are either going up or down based off the experience.
Definitely. And I don't underestimate cash tips. I thought they were dead. Then I got one this weekend. When I got back in the car, I was sitting thinking like, because DoorDash let me, it says if they tipped or not after you complete the delivery. It says 0. I was like, oh, that's kind of, and then like she sent her little 3-year-old to give me like a cash tip. I was like, oh, hey, little man. They just gave me a cash tip. I was like, oh, wow.
I will say one thing I've noticed with the pandemic is, one thing I think a lot of couriers, a lot of folks liked at the beginning, that there was not much customer interaction, but it does, if you're just dropping the food off and running, it does kind of potentially, mean that like there's less of a connection between you and the customer. So they might, it might be easier for them to stiff you on a tip or definitely not hand you a cash tip. Have you noticed any difference with tipping during the pandemic because of this? Or, obviously at the beginning, people were tipping a lot. I'm just curious, what have you seen with tipping during the pandemic? Let's go with that question.
Well, actually, that was the first cash tip I've gotten since the pandemic started, if that says anything.
Yeah, not a lot.
Yeah, and they were fairly common before the pandemic, but they're still online tipping too. It seems like almost all tips are now online. And towards the beginning of the pandemic, they were actually bigger than usual. People really appreciate that you were getting out there and bringing them their burrito or whatever they ordered. They're very appreciative, and that's still present. But I don't hardly notice any cash tips. I think that might maybe it's gone, maybe it'll come back. But the tips in general have been about the same recently, maybe slightly higher on some days.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I appreciate all the background. I want to kind of shift the conversation to the course that we're releasing. I think any day now. I'm going to pull up the official date right here. Do you know what the official date is?
I think it's tomorrow, right?
Well, it's going live. So we're doing a soft launch, and we're obviously recording this ahead of time. So we're launching this course on April 12th. So by the time you're listening or watching this, it's either going to be live, or if you manage to get it ahead of time, we'll be doing a pre-sale where you're getting a discount for the course. But you can head over to maximumridesharingprofits.com/delivery, or just go to the homepage, maximumridesharingprofits.com. We have our rideshare course there, and then we're also going to have our delivery course right there too, where you can go and learn about the delivery course and sort of everything that's in it. The copy that we have on the homepage, the skills you need to become a top earning delivery driver, how to maximize your pay on each delivery app, how to drive like a 4,000 delivery pro on your first day. That's you, Elijah, and how to earn more, spend less, and dominate delivery. So lots of good marketing copy to hype you up for your delivery experience, your delivery course. And before we get into the nuts and bolts of the course, I'm curious to know from you, Elijah, like what have you been, from all the careers, you see on our YouTube channel, the delivery videos we have on our YouTube channel, like what are delivery couriers right now? What do they care about? What are they asking about? What are they talking about right now? Just more generally at a high level.
What I'm seeing people are really talking about the most, they want to know how to get the most out of the platform that they're on. Now, that's going to vary: Uber Eats, DoorDash, Postmates, etc. But what I'm seeing a recurring theme that they want to find out how to make the most money in the least amount of time, and they're looking for tactics on how to do that in an efficient manner. So with that being the case, I think a good example actually is like we mentioned the text templates that we covered in the course. There's so many situations that if you just shoot a quick text, it can really speed up the process on some things. And tactics like that, people are really looking for that because that allows them to slide in that extra delivery in that hour and effectively increases their per hour earnings. And once you increase that, it adds up pretty quickly in terms of how much you're making per week. It goes up a lot once you increase that per hour earnings.
Yeah. And I think it's important too that, a lot of the principles that we teach in the course, it's kind of about building habits, right? If you have to do some crazy amount of work to increase your deliveries by 0.25 per hour every single time, it may not be worth it. But if it just becomes second nature, whenever you're sitting there at a restaurant, instead of going on Facebook or Instagram, you just send a quick text to your customer and then you go on Instagram, right? And that's sort of where I think that like just a little bit of a push, a little bit of a nudge, like a little bit of training can actually make a big impact on your earnings. I know there was a big rideshare study where they looked at the earnings of actual Uber drivers based on actual data in Seattle. And it was amazing to me at the variability. Some drivers were actually earning under $10 per hour and others were over $40 per hour, right? Now, those are kind of the two extremes, but that shows you that there's a huge range, and that range is based on when and where you drive, the strategies that you're using, how good or bad of a driver or a courier that you are. And so I think that like once people start to understand that like the actions they take can really have an impact on their earnings. So I know we cover a lot of this in the course. So I kind of want to ask you, like, what are the top 3 tactics in your mind that can have an impact and increase a courier's earnings today?
Tactic 1, when it comes to restaurants, make sure you pay attention how long you're waiting there. Okay. And if you're waiting too long, you need to reevaluate if you're going to take another order from them or if you're going to put them in a little timeout. You got to remember. In the future. Yeah, in the future. Because we get paid mostly for mileage and distance. We're not really getting paid that much to wait. So we want to take that into consideration. That's tactic number 1.
Very similar to Uber, actually, right? I mean, that's what you want to be driving 70 miles an hour, down the freeway when you're with a passenger. And, I think the other thing too that I've noticed with restaurant delivery is you do get a lot of repeat restaurants, right? Like driving rideshare, you never see the same passenger again if you're in a big city like LA, but, in food delivery, right? You get a lot of the same, restaurants, right? Are there any restaurants that you personally, like to avoid, either local chains in Dallas or maybe national ones? Feel free to call them out right now.
I will say in the beginning, McDonald's.
McDonald's was bad, really?
Yeah, they've gotten better, but most McDonald's trips, for whatever reason, they're pretty short, which in itself isn't a big deal. But sometimes the wait might be longer than desired, and McDonald's is kind of cheap, so a lot of times customers may not be tipping, and when you combine those two factors, it starts to affect that per hour earnings. Now they've gotten better. But in the beginning, definitely McDonald's.
Okay. All right. So Mickey D's, they need to do some work. So tactic number one, pay attention to the restaurants that, folks are ordering from, and your experience there. The wait time is very important, and potentially, put them on your, maybe you've got a list, tier 1, tier 2, right? And keep that in mind. What's tactic number 2 to increase your earnings?
Tactic 2 is to pay attention to when are the best times to drive. Just like rideshare, delivery has a cycle. And you want to be driving during the high times of the cycle when there's a lot of demand. You don't want to be just sitting in your car, just reading the magazine, waiting for your next trip for too long. That's the sign that you're probably not delivering at the right time. So you want to find out what are the best times, like lunchtime, dinner time, and deliver during those time frames so you can maximize your earnings.
And what are the specific times that you found are the busiest for the delivery platforms? I'm assuming it's kind of similar across DoorDash and Uber Eats. What have you found? I can take a wild guess, and I sort of already know. I'm guessing lunch, dinner, because that's typically when people order food. But what have you experienced?
Yeah, so definitely lunchtime between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Sometimes maybe it might be a little activity between 2 and 3 sometimes. But if it gets slow, like go ahead and stop, do something else. And dinner time is between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. And a lot of people overlook this, but there's not as much competition in terms of other drivers taking deliveries. But if you're willing to do the overnight thing and you're aware of what restaurants are open overnight, there actually is some good jewels there.
Interesting. So what time are we talking? Like 2, 3 a.m., 1 a.m.?
Like between midnight and 3. Like those times, there's a lot of activity. And oftentimes
weekends,
these companies, especially the weekends, but this is actually even weeknights, because a lot of times these companies, they're aware that no one wants to be out driving at that time. So they usually throw promotions out to incentivize us to get out there.
Yeah.
So that means that you're going to be making a little extra money on top of whatever you would have made anyway.
Yeah. And no traffic. So you can go longer distances, which, potentially gets you paid more. And, people at that time, maybe they're drinking, maybe they're smoking, right? So they're a little more generous sometimes with their tips, or even, sometimes the quantity of food that they're ordering, right? Because a lot of times the tip is based off the size of the order value, right? So kind of the bigger, the better within reason. If it's $100 order, it's kind of better as long as it's not like 2 crates full of stuff.
Right.
One other hidden gem that I've found in my experience, Sundays always seem to be pretty busy. And in addition, the holidays, but also big events, like Halloween or Super Bowl. I think this is pretty common across a lot of the gig economy platforms, whether you're doing rideshare or delivery. Did you find those times worth it? Do you think that Sundays and holidays and things like that are just as good?
Yeah, because one thing, and I guess this would be tactic number 3 since we didn't get to 3, but
all right, let's do it.
Rideshare and delivery are kind of interrelated in the sense of a lot of rideshare drivers do delivery too. So any kind of event that takes rideshare drivers off the delivery platforms because they got their hands full is going to upset the balance between how many customers are ordering food and how many delivery drivers are available. It upsets it in our favor because there's going to be more orders flowing out, which means that you make more money. So, and there's also events that may not necessarily be impacted directly by rideshare, but they impact delivery. A lot of people have a habit of watching the Super Bowl, ordering Uber Eats or DoorDash at the same time. And if we know that's going to happen, you best believe I'll be out there on that Super Bowl night.
Yeah, definitely. I think the interplay between rideshare and delivery. I can't remember if we cover this in the course or not, but one thing I always liked as a rideshare driver is that, you can get pulled, anywhere and everywhere, right? You could get a ride, especially in a big city like LA. It's kind of almost common to get like a 20, 30, 40, 50 mile trip. And if you end up near your house towards the end of the night and you don't want to get pulled away, you can actually switch to Uber Eats, for example, right? And kind of probably the earlier, the better if it's around dinner time, because people aren't ordering. I don't think you actually physically can order usually from more than like 5 to maybe 10 miles away. So I like that it's always, sort of a shorter radius, which also means less miles on your car, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I've done that several times since I started out in rideshare. And if I ended up in sometimes back home, but oftentimes I might have an appointment for something else. And rideshare wouldn't be ideal because it might take me to the other side of the city or to another city. But I have an appointment in an hour. I want to go ahead and make some money though. a great alternative is a delivery, because I know it's going to keep me in that local area.
Yeah. So let's put yourself in the shoes of someone listening or watching out there. They're thinking about doing delivery, or maybe they just got started, or maybe they're already doing it. They check out our course, Maximum Delivery Profits, cool name, but they see the sticker price. We're listing it at $69 is the list price. And then we've got some discounts. If you buy it before it goes live, for example, you can get it for $49. Why do you think someone should purchase this course? Like, why should they spend their hard-earned money to buy this course?
Well, in the gig economy in general, and delivery is no exception, there's a learning curve, and the learning curve could actually be quite some time, because this stuff that we talk about in the course, you may think of it at some point, but it comes through trial and error. So what the course gives you the ability to do is you can learn from our trials and errors and pick up all those habits, all those tactics and strategies that we've developed to work around and make the most money without having to go through all that trial and error. So you save yourself a lot of time, a lot of effort, and obviously you can start off once you learn the material in the course, making the higher side of that per hour average that we talked about just right off the bat, as long as you implement what we teach.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to put it, because now I didn't even think of that myself. Now that I think about it, there were a lot of mistakes that I made at the beginning and a lot of trial and error. And it would be nice to sort of have the crash course to get all that info quickly. What would you say to someone who said, I don't want to pay for the course because all this information is out there. I can get it for free, because there are a lot of good YouTubers. I mean, our channel, 95, maybe 99% of our content is free. And there's a lot of good stuff out there. We're covering services and releasing weekly. And there's a ton of great YouTube delivery folks out there now too. So what would you say if someone said that I could get it for free?
Well, everything has a price. It comes down to time. And time is a greater currency to me than money. And if I could eliminate more time, if I could basically save time and then boost my income up immediately, as opposed to having that happen somewhere later down the line, and I look at all the money that I made within that period where, okay, if I was trying to figure out all this stuff on my own, and that also includes looking at other videos and stuff, it may not be organized in the right way. And you got to really search for it. If I do the math, I'm actually coming out ahead pretty fast, because I can start making some more money immediately. And from there, the dollars just keep stacking up.
Yeah. Interesting. I will say a couple other, I'm on the same page with you, obviously, since I am a co-creator of the course, but I think it is interesting to think about, sort of like, I really like the, kind of trading. And I think a lot of people, I get it, right? Like, especially when you're buying anything, and this framework, I think, applies to not just the course, but anything in life, right? Like, if you can make an investment that you are reasonably confident will accelerate your income, right? Then I think in a lot of cases, it does make sense, right? And, obviously I'm trying to sell people and, market this course to them, but I think we very strongly believe that it will accelerate their earnings. And I think the example that I use on one of the pages is that, if you're, I'm going to pull it up right now so I don't botch it, but I think we said, well, I can't find it right now, but I think we said, if you look at how much more you can make, just 10% more as a full-time driver, and you're making $15 an hour, for example, or $10 an hour, you go up $1 per hour and you're working 40 hours a week. That's $40 right there in a single week, right? So it really isn't a large amount of money. And I think the other thing that why I really like learning from courses myself is that it's organized, right? When I go through the course right now, and I don't know if you have it pulled up, I do, but we've got a whole section on getting started. The first thing that you should do, which we already talked about, thinking about part-time versus full-time, using a bike or a scooter versus a car, picking up food, dropping off food. These are all separate videos that all look around, in the 2 minutes, anywhere up to from 2 minutes to 5 minutes range. And it's sort of very organized in a way that takes you from A to Z, right? And this is not the first course I've created. We've created 2 courses for rideshare. I wrote a book on delivering for rideshare. And that's really the way that I like structuring these courses. It's in a way where you understand, hey, there's all these things that you can worry about, but what's the most realistic? Like, you're not going to go do everything at the start, right? What's the first thing you should do, right? Like, get a dash mount, or, get a phone mount for your car, right? Like, you're going to be, grabbing your phone a lot. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, don't go crazy and buy all these little gadgets and everything. Like, get the most important thing, or do the most important thing, and then go from there, right?
Yeah, I think the hidden theme in there is priority of information and the right order to absorb it in. And that has a lot of value.
Yeah. So was there a favorite video that you recorded, or maybe a favorite topic or concept in the course?
Uh, I would say in terms of a favorite video, probably, believe it or not, actually, there's a video in the course where we talk about what are the best times to drive, and that has value. But we also go into, we just covered that everything has a cycle. We cover that cycle on a daily basis and also a weekly basis. So we go into what are the best days to drive to, and when you overlap that information, it becomes just as clear as day why like you can't even stop driving because there's so much demand coming in at certain times and days. And on other days and times, you're sitting there and it's been like 15 or 20 minutes, like, well, what's going on? Why am I not getting any deliveries? What's the time in the day?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's also good, that you have some people who are kind of optimizing for making as much money as possible, right? And that might require some sacrifices, driving sometimes in some places that you don't want to do. But I think if you understand like the best and most profitable times to drive, you can then really optimize for your own personal schedule. Like, what are your goals? Is it to maximize the amount of money and not spend any time with your family or kids? If that's what it is, then we can kind of help you do that, right? But if it's to have more of a balance and, say, hey, maybe you work one busy night or, these late night times, right? You kind of want to uncover those hidden gems. When I was doing a lot of driving for Uber and Lyft, I realized early on, I really liked doing the early AM airport runs, like the 3 to 5 AM airport runs, because there wasn't a lot of competition. There were long rides and there was no traffic, right? And so that aligned well with my schedule at the time when I started getting over the party nights on Friday and Saturday nights. So if you kind of know about the best times and places, you can then optimize for your own personal situation, right?
Yeah, and everyone's situation will be different. It might be part-time or full-time based on what your needs are. But when you have that information, you can really structure your schedule around that and make the most money possible in the least amount of time.
Yeah. So is there anything that you think the course is missing, or that, we could have done a better job or improve upon in the future?
Honestly,
be honest.
Well, as someone who's been doing this for 5 years, I honestly feel like we've covered everything.
Yeah.
I would say maybe we could add a few more text templates, but as we think of them, we can definitely add them.
Yeah. And I will say, that we've definitely iterated, some of the early feedback we got in some of our Uber and Lyft courses was that there weren't enough advanced topics, right? And so I know in this course specifically, we've got an advanced driver right here in yourself. And so it looks like we ended up making 6, 9, 10, 11 advanced videos, anywhere from a few minutes to 7 minutes long, right? So we do cover a lot of advanced topics, and it is a nice, I really like the course or book structure because you can kind of either start from the beginning, if you're a brand new driver, or you can skip around, or if it's tax time and you want to go brush up on taxes, you can also come over to that section too and look at taxes, right? So there really is a it's sort of like a choose how you will, right, kind of adventure course game.
I like that phrasing. Yeah.
So kind of wrapping up here, is there anything that we haven't mentioned about the course, or that you think is important for folks to know that are thinking about this course, thinking about delivery in general?
Well, I would just give some general advice to anyone who's getting started in delivery. I would say in terms of like mistakes to avoid, the biggest mistake I made when I first started off, I would say waiting too long in restaurants and not overvaluing the restaurant. So a lot of times we start delivering food. It doesn't occur to us that we don't have to sit there and wait. We're not obligated. If it makes sense, we can cancel and leave. And it might make sense because we might get another delivery immediately. But if we're sitting there waiting and we already covered, we don't really get paid that much for wait time. You sit down, and actually that's my advice. If you're waiting long enough to sit down, maybe you shouldn't be waiting.
Yeah. That is good advice.
For me, if
you're not standing, you should be moving.
Yeah.
5 minutes is your limit.
Yeah. 5 minutes is my personal limit. And after that, that's when I'm going to reevaluate. Should I come back, or should I put them in like a mini timeout? And my other advice would be keep in mind of what time of day it is, because some restaurants, they're actually pretty, I don't know if it's because of staff, but they're real good like during dinner time, but they get their butts kicked in lunchtime and vice versa. So keep that in mind too.
Interesting. Okay. Well, really appreciate all the advice that you've been giving out. And as you mentioned earlier, the course is now live. So I kind of confirmed or remembered that this podcast and video will be going out once the course is already live. So you've probably seen us talking about it. You can head over to MaximumRidesharingProfits.com and check that out. We'll have a button where you can go right to the delivery course or the rideshare course, or we'll probably set up a package where you can actually get both for a nice discount. And really appreciate all the work that you've been putting in, Elijah, on this course. I'm excited to see what people have to say, excited to hear the feedback and the comments, the questions, the concerns, what we did well, what we need to improve on. And if folks want to connect with you, follow your stuff, where can they go? Where can they get more Elijah?
Well, I'm actually pretty active on Facebook, actually. So feel free to add me. I'm pretty available on Facebook. Probably the easiest way to reach out to me. And if you have any questions, let's talk.
Sounds good. I know you're doing some managing of the Rideshare Guy YouTube channel, and you do some videos there too. And you've got your own channel. We'll leave links to all of that in the show notes. Would you want to give a quick shout out for your own channel too?
It's called The App Lifestyle. And on that channel, I talk we cover delivery topics like Uber Eats, DoorDash, etc. And if you do decide to pay a visit over there, I'm looking forward to talking to you and getting you a testimonial. What I mean by testimonial is I want to hear you say, hey, we watched the content, we made a lot more money, and I love it. I love that.
Very cool. Yeah, no, it's always good to help folks earn more money, because I think that's what we all care about, right?
Right.
All right, cool. Well, really appreciate it, Elijah, and look forward to hearing from you again soon.